Welcome to Vlog Thursday number 447, and Tom is clearly in a hotel room because I'm traveling. Uh, I will talk about this in a moment. I'll wait till some more people get here. This is the GTIA ChannelCon event that I'm at. If you're wondering where I'm traveling to or where I'm at, I didn't really announce this event. I don't know why. I kind of broke away from my habit that I probably should get back into it, telling people when and where I'm going to be there. But it has been wonderful meeting so many of you. I have met a lot of people that knew me from the channel, and I think it's working that I say, hey, feel free to say hi. I'm here to socialize with people. Because a lot of people just came up and say hi, and that's cool. Quick fist bump, whatever. Hey, like your channel. What do you think of this? And, I had some really good discussions with people and really enjoyed it. But the first thing I want to start with, the passkey video has caused some controversy for people. And I could have went more in depth, and maybe I'll go to a second video on that topic to get more technical on passkeys. I get it. Some people are kind of upset saying, but Tom, you didn't really sell me on a solution for it. I'm like, well, that's kind of the problem, is there's not a solution. It's the trade-offs that were made. If you want something to be locked down where people may not get it, passkeys and the portability compromise that was made of them is a problem. But then there's the person that says, but, and they're not wrong, but you could is the really word we're going to use to stretch this. Someone building a website and using that as an authentication method. Well, even more than just websites, obviously, anyone building an authentication system that requires passkey, they can, and this is a discussion going on in my forums right now, they can require user presence and verifications, and someone was linking to these things. This is true. You can, if you're the developer, say, I do not want this to be stored in a password manager. I would like someone to use, and you can specify, because you can't just use any hardware key. They're certified by I think it's called FIDO Alliance. And with that certification, you get in a list. And if you want to get specific, now this is where there can be a little fuzzy, but you can say, I only will allow passkeys to be stored within a YubiKey, end of story. That means you're not going to be able to save it in your password manager. You're not going to have it portable. It's going to be locked to that YubiKey. And that's not necessarily, I think, a bad thing to do. But I pointed out, and I've checked several sites. And if someone wants to, by the way, I would love to know what site does this, because big sites like even GitHub don't do this. If you go to GitHub and you switch from your username, password, second factor authentication, such as TOTP, and then you choose, I would like to sign in as a passkey. No problem. Here's a passkey. Do what you want with it. That's how most sites handle it. Now, I did have a discussion with people who are much more in the know about how Microsoft authentication works. Microsoft does have a menu for people logging in that do allow for the specificity. That's a hard word to say it early. It's early in the morning where I'm at. That is a harder word to say. They do allow for this option to be set and go, I want only this passkey type to be saved, which can lock people to that. Now, the part I say is a little fuzzy, and I don't know if I remember hearing, and there's a really good podcast about FIDO authentication. It's on the Open Source Security podcast. And if I do a follow-up, my follow-up will be probably, I might reach out to the person who was on that interview, because they have been implementing a Rust version of the passkey for integration, like writing the authentication system. So they have a lot of experience in where the bugs are with it. And they've submitted a lot of bugs to the FIDO Alliance. The FIDO Alliance, by the way, is not an open organization, is a pay-to-play organization. Therefore, it's not easy to join if you're an open source developer. The costs are actually really high. So, hold on, I sneeze. Yeah. Anyways, but I can imagine, and this is the part I'm not sure, and I would have an expert on to cover this, that you might be able to spoof that. Now, I don't think a lot of people are going through the trouble of spoofing it, because generally this is protecting the average users. And I do have a video I might work on, because one of my friends, IT manager for a city, he moved everybody to YubiKey authentication, everybody, and it's worked. And I want to talk about him and interview him at some point because he's been doing it for about a year now. And I didn't want to do it when he did it because everyone talks about doing it. But then everyone talks about, oh, it's going to be a disaster putting everyone on a hardware token. And it turns out he's actually had really good success with it. And that's what I talk about is the success that came from it, not the problems, because there's been many issues, but not as many as people thought there would be doing this. Obviously, as the IT person, you want to move everybody to a secure posture to minimize your problems, and everyone fights you on it because security and convenience are at odds with each other, which is the whole point of my passkeys video was, yeah, you are making trade-offs if you switch to passkeys. I like them. I think they're cool. I think they're, especially for the average user logging into their local pizza place or to order some food online, that is a place. Even myself, I mean, if you broke into my food account first, I don't save my credit card to any online ordering account, but I will save a passkey to some of them because it's a faster way to log in. Thumbs up for that. I just click the passkey, log in, and I'm in. And I don't mind if that's synchronized, because if you were to get my password manager, it would be terrible. But if you logged into all the pizza places I go to, I would be not that upset. It would suck. I'm not saying I want anyone to have my pizza login, but I see some things as like acceptable to use as passkeys, and maybe that's where it is what's acceptable. I do not find it acceptable to have a high value important count that I would never want to lose because it means a lot. Like, my YouTube channel, for example, I'm not switching that to a passkey because, yeah, if you got the passkey to my YouTube channel, that would be bad. And those are the kind of guardrails I put around it, because I get the convenience. I get it's better than creating passwords. It's faster login because there's not like a username and password. Not that that matters much. I say faster. If you're using a password manager, it's pretty much the same speed because I'm either hitting fill or I hit passkey. Like, doesn't take that long to do. But I wanted to address that because I just think a lot of people misunderstood it. And some people are like, oh, you're just fear mongering. I'm like, no, the bar keeps moving for security in the right direction. Things are more secure, but the attacks are more sophisticated. So we keep moving where that line is, or how big the moat around our castle is, if you want to look at it that way. And we've now went from, think of the fun analogy of, we went from the straw houses on our way up to the brick house that the big bad wolf can't blow down. That's the idea. We keep putting them in a more secure. I feel right now your password manager is a moat with the gate pulled up, and you got a moat around it. You've got a castle. It's fortified. You've got good defenses. Password managers, through iterations and incidents like LastPass had, uh, they've really brought a lot of attention and a lot of smart people going, how do we solve this problem better? And we're at a much better way of solving the problem. But as you put things in that castle, now you have to be absolutely utterly aware, what is the potential risk if someone comes into that castle? It's just some thoughts I like to have on these things to make sure people are aware of them, because it gets sold too often in my world, if you will, that this solves the problem. And it pushes the problem and it raises the bar, but it doesn't solve the problem in the same way. Having two separate authentications does. Biometrics is not one of them. A lot of people think, well, yeah, it does biometrics. I'm like, but that just unlocks the castle door. You're using biometrics to unlock the castle doors. It doesn't really solve the problem. And I just want people to think critically about it. I'm not saying we haven't made strides in security. Matter of fact, I start that video out talking about the strides we've made in security, because I think, especially for the average person logging into their food account or whatever they're doing in a grocery store order, passkeys fine. Saving your password at these places, or saving your credit card with these places, just in general, I don't do. My trust level for them to hold my credit card is really, really low. I just hate to say it that way, but I know there are proper methods by which to do it. And you can say there's laws around it. And you'd be absolutely right. There's PCI DSS, and there's frameworks that people should be following and will always tell you they are following. And then the reality hits when they're like, credit card breach, loses blah, blah, blah credit cards. And you're like, how are they storing them? Improperly, it turns out. So this is a common theme amongst many applications. Even modern applications written today that were clearly vibe coded, no one thought about the security of them. Therefore, we're seeing egregious breaches of bad all that could have been avoided by bad practices that were well documented. Like we should not be doing it this way, and yet people are doing it this way. That's my little rant on passkeys. Yeah, I hated to mention it, but there's no doubt the T app was a masterclass in how not to do things. It is just, it is a disaster. It is like, who did all these things so poorly? Yeah, it is not just, I mean, that's one of those debriefs, and this was recently written. Wow. Did you guys ever write anything before? Did you know that security is a thing? Unfortunately, and I guess a positivity I like to draw from the overall thing. The fact that this makes the mainstream, not just the nerd news, not the nerd tech news who are in these places, but the mainstream is a good thing because the world gets a little bit less trusting and a little bit more curious about tech. And I hope it doesn't jade people, but I hope they go, do I click save my credit card in the pizza place because I don't know that I trust this pizza place? Do I have private conversations unless I have a strong confidence of what end-to-end encrypted is? By the way, I would say there's a very large number of people outside of the tech community that at least have heard the words end-to-end encrypted and think about that. So yeah, that's there's slowly, as the exposure to these problems, people are becoming more critical of tech. Hopefully it doesn't end in distrust. We want to build trust with the, I don't look at them as separate people, but we have the people who work in tech, many of you listening to this, and you have the outside people who are just users of the tech, maybe in a more passive way. They just want the pizza to show up. They want to have a conversation with their friend, and we just don't have always as many conversations one-on-one where mentally you're like, yeah, there's an expectation of privacy if I'm talking in a room with someone, that you kind of feel the same way when I just message them online. But obviously those companies don't always have best at heart. But now let's talk about GTIA and what the hell is a GTIA and what is a conference that Tom's at. The conference GTA, so it's kind of a story. The CompTIA is something anyone who's worked in the tech industry is aware of, the certification process that you can go through CompTIA. And their certs, they've been around forever and are somewhat of table stakes. A lot of people just go, at least get your CompTIA, your Security Plus, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the most basic certs. And what they'll show a lot of times and why employers ask them, oh, great, Matt threw that up on their gtia.org. They are a little bit of a gatekeeping, but also it's hard as an HR person. How do you hire someone? How do I know that they're good technical? Can we screen for it in some way? And some of them will say, well, minimum 2 years of college and some type of computer science degree, or um, the idea that, okay, we can go through some certification program like CompTIA, and at least I know they've passed these tests, so they hopefully know something or at least put some effort into it. So CompTIA was sold off, and the nonprofit organization that was underneath it is now a separate entity called GTIA. Now they don't do anything with certifications anymore. That is, CompTIA's a privately owned business now, and it's 100% separate. But the people that were running it essentially now are doing educational things, and you can learn more at gti.org. But they hold a big event called the Channel event, and that's where I'm at right now, is the Channel event. So it's fun. I've been meeting a lot of people, talking to people, but it's hard to define the organization, even as someone who's part of it. And I've been very much vocal. That's part of the problem, is defining what all the things they do. I think they are in a good position to do a lot of good things. They certainly bring a lot of people together, and that alone is a big value of the events they hold, because a lot of technicians and people have a really cost-effective way to show up here, hang out, and interact and have conversations. And I've had some amazing conversations over the last couple of days, so I truly enjoy it. But on the other side, I think they could do more because of the position they hold. But like any large company, it's not easy. So I don't know. I don't know where I stand on everything they do. I love what they're trying to do. I'd like to see them actually do it. Hopefully they can solve any bureaucratic problems that keep them from being more effective. But anyone who's worked at large organizations with lots of competing people, that's a challenge. Now let's talk about this. I did see this. I will reserve for a while until it comes out. I think it's a good idea. I think it's neat. The UniFi OS server, but I haven't played with it. I have friends that have. It's been on my to-do list. Check it out. I like that the direction UniFi is going. That was probably the easiest way I can sum it up from reading. I have not actually rubber hit the road tested it, but there's been a demand for you to run a more full featured, because people like, but all the love goes to the, UniFi Dream Machine. Someone pointed out, and they're wrong in the way they said it, because it's a feature coming. They're like, well, I don't get these, for example, the content filtering feature. They're like, well, I don't get this if I have a UXG Pro. And yes, you do. You don't get it today. The UXG Pro always lags behind the ones with the built-in controller. So this is some ways I believe to fix that. If I had to guess, that's what they're working towards, is the ability to solve that problem. It isn't solved right now, but I think this is a step in that direction of them doing it. But the other problem they have with the UXG Pro, for easy example, I have one that we're using. We've been testing it a lot, but it's still, even running a release candidate firmware, it's still not at the same firmware level. And that's why when UniFi tells you a feature like CNAME for support, for example, CNAME support didn't come until the UniFi base OS was at a certain version. So those are some of those challenges you run into if you don't have the base OS version. Yeah, that feature gets there once it hits that base OS version. Is what it is. I think it's pretty cool. It was funny because someone commented on, Matt posted a video about the UniFi Dream Machine, and I think people, maybe they just don't know, but someone's like, Tom, why aren't you promoting Ruckus? Aren't they better? I think Ruckus is better than UniFi, and they have more updates and are more secure. I'm like, really? Did you not watch my video on Ruckus? And I did a follow-up because Ruckus finally responded, but I also pointed out how weird their response was. When Ruckus had, for those of you who didn't watch the video, too long didn't watch, Ruckus had an egregious number of security flaws, which included several backdoors, ways for people to elevate their privileges because that was the convenient way for technicians to do it. These didn't seem like nefarious backdoors. They just seemed like admin shortcuts for their support team. And that's terrible. Who puts that garbage in a product? That's not the way to do it. And the security researchers that found it, I really feel it was the first time Ruckus ever went through a security audit. And second, they tried reaching out to him for months, got no response from Ruckus. So the disclosure timeline hit and they published it. Ruckus did respond, but not right away. Someone said they responded prior to my video. And I said, no, they didn't. Except for one of them they did, but this is where things get nuanced. They didn't respond to security researchers, so I cited that as my source. And I did go to the Ruckus security page and couldn't find them. And I was doing the smart thing, I thought, and feel free to criticize me for this. I sorted by new updates and releases. And even when I did my follow-up video, I sorted by new updates and releases. It's not on the list. But if you do an advanced search and look for new updates and releases, you can find it. It's almost like they're purposely breaking it. And by the way, the only thing Ruckus did was say, we fixed the back door. Why was there, could you address why it took you so long to fix it and why it was fixed? Because I think I published my video on the 14th. Ruckus's first fix was before the 14th, but then there's several other fixes that came after the 17th. But either way, why didn't you respond to the security researchers who started contacting you months before? And that's the part that was really like a mess. So I don't really see Ruckus as a company that has any credibility left. I think they're just, and honestly, the sad part to me is because there's someone who commenting, Tom, Ruckus is more secure after I did videos on my channel. You would assume someone on my channel may have seen the Ruckus video or is aware that Ruckus is a dumpster fire, but they're not. And because Ruckus isn't talking about it, their strategy is working, because clearly a pro-Ruckus person who thinks that they're a great product is still saying, why don't we use Ruckus after a disaster? So I don't like the fact that their strategy is working, but it is. So that's the elephant in the room. We'll just pretend there wasn't giant flaws in our system. That's our PR angle. And maybe Tom will shut up about it. That's a PR angle, I guess.
Tom can shut up. Matt's not gonna.
True that.
Former Ruckus user. Just installed what was it, UDR7 that I did the video on the other day?
Yeah,
And
that's the
I
one that
had
person commented on, was that one.
I had Ruckus devices all across a huge organization years ago, and at first they were great, and then the management just became unstable, man. I was rebooting them all the time, and I'm not going to sit here and try to explain what that was because it was, almost a decade ago, but it was not a very good experience at
Yeah,
all.
well, and they got bought by CommScope, and a lot of people said that was their downfall, was when CommScope bought them. I don't know. I never used them, so I don't have. I mean, we pulled them out of a couple places, but they were old Ruckuses, and there was just time to upgrade. They're like, I don't know. It's funny because the reason we were doing the upgrade is the vendor that had installed them quoted them a price about 3 times what we were charging to put the same thing in. So we won the bid there because we used UniFi, and they like, yeah, we don't want those licensing fees. So that's because I don't understand Ruckus's licensing fees because they're a reseller program. So you can't just, I mean, you can Google them, but they're all over the place when you Google them. So unless you sign a reseller program, and someone pointed out here when I was asking about Ruckus's pricing in the live stream, maybe a month or 2 ago, I said, I looked, I don't understand it. And they said, someone says, I'm a reseller and it's hard to understand.
Yeah, and a decade ago it was the same thing. I'd go through an MSP as opposed to purchasing independently, and I could probably have gotten it through a VAR some way or another, but I needed that guidance on making the purchase because everything was so cloudy with regards to feature set and pricing. And ultimately, the only reason I went with Ruckus was because I was on a floor with Dolce & Gabbana, and their wireless network was overpowering mine with what I had. I had Sonic Wall, Sonic points all over the place. And Ruckus did the job, but it was just there to do that one job. I didn't really go any further with it because the experience was not very positive.
So
okay, I'm going to the background. I just had to have my piece. Later.
Yep. Nonetheless, that's about where I'm going to wind it down here, though, because my wife's doing a talk. Oddly, I submitted no talks. I'm speaking none at this particular conference. My wife is. And so I'm going to go see her do a talk with a couple friends. They're doing a panel, which is a version of a talk. She's done presentations before. I've helped her with some of the memes and silly stuff that I like to put in her in-person presentation. So I love that she's getting up on stage more. So I am going to go support my wife doing her talk by attending it and sitting in the front row and heckling her when possible. So that's how I do this. I'm going to wind this down here. Thanks everyone for joining me, which is it's a little bit earlier here because I'm in Nashville, so it's a different time zone. So I'm a little bit earlier. I know how busy I will be later because I have a whole packed day of things going on. So that's why I want to get the Vlog Thursday out of the way. I will be looking though at UniFi server. So the UniFi OS thing, I think that's really cool. I'm looking forward to it. I know several people will probably be dropping videos right away. If you didn't notice, I generally don't drop videos on new things right away. I like to test them a lot longer. And because I've known about it for a little while because I'm on an early access program, but I haven't had any time to actually do any testing on it. So once I've done some testing, I'll definitely share my thoughts. But in concept, I really like where they're going with it. There's my hot take, as someone asked. But thanks, everyone, and take care. See you online. Catch me in the forums. I'm still available via, you can message me and things like that. So, all right, take care.